is the president-elect Joe Biden's choice for chief of staff. It's Ron Klain. Mr. Klain, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me, Chuck.
The models indicate that another 100,000 Americans may die before January 20th. We may be sitting at a case counts well over 200,000 by the time you take over in this administration. So what do you do now in anticipation for what looks like is going to be exponentially worse in 60 days?
Yeah, Chuck, I mean, it's a very grave situation. Back in September, then candidate Joe Biden warned that America was headed to a very dark winter if the administration didn't step up its action. And, the very first business day of his transition on Monday of this week, the president-elect met with his COVID task force and then made a public statement afterwards where he called on all Americans to mask up. He urged governors to impose masking mandates now and reiterated the fact that when he becomes president, he will impose one on a nationwide basis. And so, look, he's not the president now. There's not that much that Joe Biden can do right now to change things other than to reiterate kind of the message you heard from Dr. Osterholm, which is that all Americans and our state and local governments need to step up right now. If the president, the administration is not going to lead, that's where the leadership has to come from. That will change on January 20th. But right now we have a crisis. It's getting worse. We had never had a day with 100,000 cases in a single day until last week. By next week, we may see 200,000 cases in a single day. So this is getting much worse, Chuck.
What do you, I'm curious, with your coronavirus advisory board, has there been any even informal contact between the task force and your advisory board? Has there been informal contact, for instance, between the president-elect and Dr. Fauci?
Unfortunately, Chuck, we can't. We can't until we get that GSA ascertainment that authorizes us to contact government officials. And so we can't have any of those kinds of contacts until we get to that stage of ascertainment. Obviously, there's information that passes in scientific circles. The people on our task force, like Dr. Osterholm, are leading scientists. But Chuck, I think you hit a key point, which is that Joe Biden's going to become president of the United States in the midst of an ongoing crisis. That has to be a seamless transition. We now have the possibility, we need to see if it gets approved, of a vaccine starting perhaps in December, January. Right. There are people at HHS making plans to implement that vaccine. Our experts need to talk to those people as soon as possible so nothing drops in this change of power we're going to have on January 20th.
Have your folks been able to have any contact with Pfizer at all? And do you have a better understanding of just how soon the vaccine could get distributed?
We're going to have meetings between our top scientific advisors and the officials of these drug companies, not just Pfizer, but there are other promising vaccines as well. We're going to start those consultations this week. But again, I think that there are two issues here, Chuck. One is the scientific issue around the vaccine. But I think in some ways the bigger issue, I've been saying this since April, the bigger issue will be the mechanics of manufacture and distribution and getting this vaccine out. And that really lies with folks at the Health and Human Services Department. We need to be talking to them as quickly as possible. It's great to have a vaccine, but vaccines don't save lives. Vaccinations save lives. And that means you got to get that vaccine into people's arms all over this country. It's a giant logistical project.
Yeah, you have said, and in convincing the American public, in a previous interview, you said in 2021, convincing them to take the vaccine might actually be the biggest challenge we face as a country. But I want to stick with one more issue on the current COVID crisis, which is, you've heard Dr. Osterholm, every expert has said, if we might have to have a temporary shutdown, but we can't do it if you're not going to basically pay these people not to open their businesses. Can't do that without Congress agreeing to something. How urgently do you think House Democrats, Senate Republicans, they're at loggerheads? Do you take what you can get now, or do you support Speaker Pelosi holding out?
Well, the president-elect had a conversation with Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer on Friday, and they talked about the need to get urgent action. I mean, we need action during the lame duck. There's a lot of things that are going to have to wait until Joe Biden is president, but this is not one of them. Getting help to people, getting help to state and local governments. I mean, it's not, we need urgent help to individuals, but we're going to see layoffs of police, of firefighters, of teachers in the next month in a lot of states and localities unless these local governments get the aid they need. I know that Speaker Pelosi is committed to that. I know Leader Schumer is committed to that. This shouldn't be partisan. By the way, These layoffs are coming not just in so-called blue states, but red states also. This is a national crisis. It needs bipartisan national action now.
Has the president-elect spoken with Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell yet about this issue or any issue?
He has not. He has not spoken with Senator McConnell about anything yet. We're hoping that Senator McConnell will accept the reality that is just the reality. Joe Biden won this election. Kamala Harris won this election. And I think it's time for leaders in both parties to get to business of this transition, to get to business of working together to start to plan out a legislative agenda for next year.
You said it's urgent for Congress to act in the lame duck. And to are we to read in between the lines that you're telling Speaker Pelosi, look, don't stick to your guns completely, compromise where you have to? Is that the message that you wanted her to hear?
What Speaker Pelosi has done a magnificent job of handling this. What I want her to hear is that we have her back in handling this, but we have the backs of the American people. Speaker Pelosi, by the way, was in long negotiations with Secretary Mnuchin to try to find that compromise. I mean, Chuck, it's not that she hasn't been at the table. She's been at the table. We just now see the current administration has walked away from the table. So our message to Speaker Pelosi is keep doing what you're doing. To the Republicans, let's get this done. I mean, this could be a first example of bipartisan action post the election. Last thing I'll say, Chuck, is I think the American people sent a pretty strong signal on Tuesday, on the Tuesday of Election Day, which was that they wanted to see, a couple Tuesdays ago now, they wanted to see the people in Washington work together to make progress. That's the message I think that came out of that election. They want to see action. Getting COVID aid out there is at the top of that list of action they want to see.
Well, the president of this morning has tweeted something that a lot of folks are trying to interpret, because the first line is, he won because the election was rigged. And the president's tweet goes through all of his reasons, what he believes why this election was unfair. But it's the first time he said he won. In our own reporting, Mr. Klain, we've asked an official and said, is this the closest we're going to get to the President Trump admitting that Joe Biden won? And we were told yes, and that this is the beginning of a concession process. Do you accept that as sort of step one here?
Well, look, I accept it as a further confirmation of the reality that Joe Biden won the election, and not through any of the rest of that tweet, not through fraud or anything else the president is baselessly alleging. He won because he got more votes. Okay, that's why he won. He got more votes in the popular vote by a lot, and he won the same number of electoral votes that President Trump himself called a landslide 4 years ago. But look, if the president's prepared to begin to recognize that reality, that's positive. Donald Trump's Twitter feed doesn't make Joe Biden president or not president. The American people did that. What we really want to see this week, Chuck, is the General Services Administration issue that ascertainment so we can start to do the kinds of things you and I talked about a few minutes ago. Meet with these vaccine officials, kind of get the intelligence briefings for the president-elect, the vice president-elect. That's really the measure of how this is moving forward this week, I think.
And finally, I want to ask you the importance of the Georgia runoffs to the president-elect's agenda. Look, Joe Biden, he ran on a pathway to citizenship, repealing tax cuts on corporations and the rich, passing the Equality Act, taking aggressive action on the pandemic and on climate change. To what extent does that agenda essentially lay in the hands of voters in Georgia and those Georgia runoffs? Does the president's agenda get curtailed if you don't have control of the Senate?
Well, Chuck, it's obviously important to win those seats in Georgia, not because necessarily just because of Joe Biden's agenda or whatever, but I think we have better senators in Washington. We're going to get a better output in Washington, and we have more people who support the kinds of things that Joe Biden supports. I think we're going to have, better government, better whatever. We're going to work hard to help win those Senate seats in Georgia. I think you'll see the president-elect campaign down there as we get closer to Election Day. We're going to put people, money, resources down there to help our two good candidates win. I'm very hopeful that we can win those seats, but we're gonna work. One thing that I think Joe Biden's made very clear, you've talked about all year long, Chuck, is that he's going to work with whoever gets elected, Democrats, Republicans, independents, people across the country, people in civil society, people in all kinds of sectors. And so that's what he's going to do. We want to win those seats in Georgia. It will certainly be helpful to win those seats in Georgia, but we're not going to let anything deter us from moving forward with our agenda.
But does your stack of executive orders decrease if Democrats win both of those Georgia Senate races?
Well, we're going to have to work all that through. What I'd say is that we have a big stack of business for day one already. We're going to rejoin Paris. We're going to protect the Dreamers on day one. We're going to take other action on health care on day one that the president-elect's talked about during the campaign. So we've got a busy, busy day one under any scenario here.
And, of course, the pandemic. Ron Klain, it is a busy and a large inbox as the incoming chief of staff. Appreciate you coming on. I look forward to more conversations like that as we go forward, sir.
You bet, Chuck. Thank you very much.
Hello from Washington. I'm Chuck Todd, and thanks for checking out the Meet the Press channel on YouTube. Click on the button down here to subscribe and click over here to watch the latest interviews, highlights, and other digital exclusives.